there's not really evidence that they do work as... All right, welcome back. Let's talk a little bit about
He's
masks.
from right here. In fact,
we have an
he
article,
used to be a member
a couple of different studies. One article
at
about
the
a
church
study, and then
that I
another
used to mow for.
Duke University study about masks, and I think you'll be interested to find out what they learned.
Different article.
See that in one article, they say, well, it looks like there's not really evidence that they do work. As a matter of fact, they may make things worse. And that's what the other one found out as well, in different ways, by the way. The Technocracy News points out that in Seattle, the Seattle Times admits that the face mask science is not proven. And they point out that if you really wanted to test this, this is what you would have to do. You'd have to recruit thousands of volunteers. You'd randomly divide them into two groups. You'd assign one group to always wear masks outside the house and another group to never wear masks. You'd have to wait a few months and see who gets infected and then try to sort out all the possible confounding variables like compliance and the fit of the mask and social distancing. But not only would it be tough to pull off, but it would be unethical if we are in the midst of a pandemic. Let's see, this is the same problem that they have with the vaccine as well. Because, you know, like a mask, the vaccine is intended to keep you from contracting the virus. That's what you do.
Something I forgot to point out. The reason these stay on is because they have this chin strap.
One group, and you don't vaccinate the other group, and then you let them
Pretty
go about
awesome.
their business for 2 years. 2 years. This is what I'm saying.
Dog eye view.
Anytime soon. And then you say, well, we think that it looks like this group that got the vaccine didn't contract the coronavirus. They just got ordinary colds, perhaps, or flus. And so we're going to pronounce it as effective. They're not going to do a challenge study. They're not going to vaccinate these people and expose them to COVID-19. So when we look at this, both of these things are basically baloney. Now, they did do a study, and I talked about that and it's actually pinned to the top of my Twitter feed, Libertarian. You can see the article at roundtablereport.com, where we talk about the way that Yale looked to push this idea, the propaganda to get people who are reluctant to get vaccinated. Here's how we do it. And so they had two test groups. They had one test group that was propagandized with these short little messages, and the other one that wasn't, and then they examined their attitudes. So that's the way they always do this, but they're not doing that with the masks. They make the comment, I like this comment from Technocracy News, if we all just committed suicide, I guess we could fully defeat this. And if we didn't do that, maybe we could wear bubble suits. But what they found in the article of the Seattle Times that was going over one of their studies, they said, our findings indicate that surgical masks can efficaciously reduce the emission of influenza virus particles into the environment in respiratory droplets, but not in aerosols. You hear that? In respiratory droplets, but not in aerosols. And again, Dr. McCullough pointed out that you have the aerosol, which is, you know, just the tiny viral particle itself, which is much smaller than the N95 masks are going to filter. Way, way, way smaller than a do-it-yourself cloth mask is going to do. So that's aerosol particles, and those small viral particles are going to remain in the air for a very, very long time because they basically don't have any mass, and they're going to be pushed around by wind currents. It's the droplets that can be caught by those filthy masks. And they said the problem is the virus is being transmitted by aerosols. As over 200 scientists as a group forced the WHO to admit. And so masks create aerosols via the air jets around the perimeter of the mask. So the thing that's actually transmitting it, the thing that they don't stop, the thing that they actually create jets with, that's what transmits it. What if we actually did a study of masks? Well, it turns out that Duke University has. And I'll tell you about that study here, but as a lead-in, what I talked about briefly yesterday, the fact that a Department of Natural Resources in Wisconsin is requiring people who are doing Zoom conferences to wear masks. As Zero Hedge said, we've reached now peak idiocy. Well, I don't know that we have reached peak idiocy, but it's a new high. And they said the rationale for this was a screenshot of a staff person or a high-ranking health department official, bureaucrat, if not properly attributed, could be misinterpreted to suggest that state employees are not properly following the governor's directive. See, it's all about politics. As Zero Hedge says, so what is the Department of Natural Resources more scared of, the virus or not being caught?
Because more people makes more errors.
At the right time and in the right way to the politicians who want to have this. That's what this is all about. At Duke University, they did a study, and the abstract, this is on published by sciencemag.org, mandates for mask use in public during the recent COVID pandemic, worsened by global shortage of commercial supplies.
I read the first article.
To widespread use of homemade masks and mask alternatives. So they decided they would test that. And this is what they found. So it's assumed that wearing such masks reduces the likelihood of an infected person to spread the disease, but many of these mask designs have not been tested in practice. No, really? None of them have for this. The Duke team had a speaker talk without wearing a mask, and then speak again with the mask. Each mask was tested 10 times. The test was conducted by having the speaker talk into a box. A laser was set up to highlight the droplets that emerged when the speaker talked. We noticed that speaking through some masks, particularly the neck fleece type, your homemade things and neck fleeces, seemed to disperse the largest droplets into a multitude of smaller droplets, which explains the apparent increase in droplet count relative to no mask in that case. Did you hear that? In other words, if you use some of these cloth masks, we're told, well, the cloth masks aren't going to stop the aerosol particles that are just, the individual viral particles that are airborne. They're going to pass right through this because that's like trying to stop a mosquito with a chain link hurricane fence. They're just too small. And so that's not going to stop it. But it will stop those droplets. Well, they look at this and they say, no, you know what? It actually does.
Because light and water.
Because you're wearing one of these cloth masks and it actually breaks up the droplets, which normally would fall to the floor because they're big, right? Breaks them up into smaller particles, which makes them spread more and stay airborne longer. So in the first study, they say, well, okay, for the aerosol stuff, it doesn't have any effect. It actually, the masks increase it because it pushes it out to the side and things like that, especially if you're wearing a beard like I'm wearing. I'm not wearing a beard. I'm growing a beard. How about that? Anyway, if it gets out the sides, and it does get out the sides, then it comes out with more force.
So those are toggles.
Right?
These are this.
And then they say, okay, but it stops the droplets. Well, no, said Duke. If you've got the cloth masks, it actually breaks up the droplets into smaller particles. Considering that the smaller particles are airborne longer than the large droplets, the use of such a mask might be counterproductive. Yeah, imagine that. We were extremely surprised to find that the number of particles measured with the fleece actually exceeded the number of particles measured without wearing a mask.
Some cobras spit. I want to see the mask with that.
The idea that something is
all right. Church says new up. Be well.
May not be true.